The Nuggets with another clutch win. Joker with the game winner in his return. Big lineups rule the day. Trade talk. We got a lot to get to. Locked on Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us your first listen. We appreciate you guys joining us on all platforms that you do, whether it's on YouTube where you can join the show and chat with us live when we go on air, not at any sort of set schedule for a variety of reasons, or on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get podcasts. Glad to have you with us. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. I'm joined by Adam Mares of DNVR, where you can check out pre- and post-game shows before every Nuggets game. Check out their daily podcast, as well as all the great content over at DNVR, including a really awesome new Sombor shirt featuring the Miner logo, which is absolutely fantastic. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. On today's show, we're going to talk about the win over the Pelicans. We're going to talk about that for a few segments. Adam has some thoughts on the big lineups that the Nuggets were using last night and what the impact of those might be for the Denver Nuggets long term. Third segment, we'll get to trade talk because, well, it's late January, and that's what you do when you have an NBA podcast in late January is you talk about trade stuff. And I've got some stuff to talk about with Adam in that segment. Glad to have you guys with us. Let's get started here. The Denver Nuggets get the win over the New Orleans Pelicans on the road, 99-98, double munder as the Pelicans get the win, or the Nuggets get the win over the Pelicans, thanks to a very late clutch Nikola Jokic game winner. This was one that it was kind of the opposite of a lot of these games where the Nuggets didn't stage a comeback. It wasn't like they were down and then had to rally. It was they had a lead. It was comfortable. It slipped. It almost got out of control, and they snatched it back right at the end with some clutch plays. Adam, what was your big takeaway from the win over the Pelicans?
Well, my big takeaway is what we'll talk about in segment 2, which is that the Nuggets went to the big lineups today out of necessity, I think. No Michael Porter, no Bones Highland tonight, so it changed who you were going to play. And then also, I think, as a response to the New Orleans Pelicans, who I think are one of the best built foundations. I don't think they're a final product, but I think they have a great foundation of a roster because they have so many great defensive wings. And you saw that last night. So Denver, I think, in response to that, Denver doesn't have great wings, but they do have a lot of forwards that can play like wings in stints. And Denver went to those combos in that game. So that's my big takeaway. But there was a lot of other little takeaways along the way, which if I were to kind of start, I got a bunch of them, but one of them I'll start with is to say Jamal Murray's interest in and execution of running the second unit over the last handful of games has been really phenomenal. And I think when they threw out combos that you had never seen before that featured no natural playmakers, Christian Brown, Zeke Naji, Vlatko Čančar, Jeff Green, alongside Murray, you're asking Murray to do a lot of heavy lifting. And I thought in this game, especially in the first half, Murray did a great job of it.
Yeah, he was really effective in those minutes, got everybody involved. It was kind of funny the way this game kind of played out, which is if we take a step back and look at the overall kind of efficiency numbers, it kind of says this, the starters played awesome offense and pretty terrible defense, and the bench played mediocre offense and absolutely incredible defense. The defense from the bench unit was phenomenal. Now, some of that has to do with the guys that the Pelicans were missing, right? Everybody steps up a notch. That plays into part of the equation. Murray, though, I agree with you that relative to kind of what the expectation is, anytime that you win your minutes, you do have to get it done with the bench. Even if you defend, you still have to be able to create points. Murray in 40 minutes did play 40 minutes on the first half of the back-to-back. We'll talk about that third segment, but 25 points, 7 assists, 11 to 21 shooting, 3 of 8 from 3. I thought his tempo was good. I thought his pace was good. I thought he got the ball. I thought Vlatko helped with how he was involved in the offense, and just really good.
You know what's funny, Matt? Because you keep saying he got everyone involved, and I think he ran the show great. But what stood out to me was his one-on-one scoring, and that was a lot of it. Was there were a lot of let's run a set, nothing worked, and a lot of end of possession, everybody flatten out, let me go one-on-one against my guy, and he just kept delivering in that first half. So to me, it was more impressive almost from his scoring alone. With one caveat. When Herb Jones was on the floor in this game, and something that'll be interesting if we talk about this, like what do the Pelicans matchup against Denver look like? They put Herb Jones on Jamal Murray, and he was having a hard time scoring on him. I think when Herb Jones was on the court, the Nuggets had an 89 offensive rating or something like that. That's a note to me where you look at who guards Jokic well, who guards Murray well, because that's the foundation of Denver's offense. Herb Jones guarded Jamal Murray extremely well in this game. And that's something that one of my big takeaways that I'll read into down the line is Herb Jones is maybe a tough matchup for Murray.
He might be. I think if there's a playoff matchup, though, I think the big key is that the Nuggets are going to help off of Jones to bring help on Zion. Like that's what the Bucks did, and it really does work. Like you help off of Herb Jones to bring help on Zion. You crowd the paint, and then you make Herb Jones shoot. Like he's in the Aaron Gordon role. And that's where he struggled this season. So if you can put that enough pressure on him, they can take him off, and that kind of frees him up. The other thing I thought that was interesting is Jokic talked about this a lot, about his approach when teams switch and go small. So on the game-winning possession, the Nuggets had 2 consecutive turnovers trying to get the ball to Jokic. Murray and Jokic just were not on the same page. 2 pretty bad turnovers. Like I thought they were bad passes from Murray. That's just how I read it. But they run what happens is they run pick and roll and they switch, and Joker just calls for it again. They just run it again. And they've done that. Joker's talked a lot about this, about how he talked about this post game too with Katie, about how that's what they like to do. So Herb Jones is now defending Jokic as the screener, and then he helps on the Murray drive because that's what Herb Jones thinks is like he's got to help to keep containment on Murray so he doesn't get to the rack, and you just leave Joker open. And if you don't immediately, and if you bring, what's great about that set is like if you do that, once you force that decision, if you do bring help over to guard Jokic on the floater, then the high wing on the left has a cut right down in the middle, and if you bring it from the corner, that's an open corner 3. Like again,
Denver was getting them, by the way, in this game. Like Denver, this game feels rough because Denver missed all of their shots down the stretch. I mean, it was a 10-0 run, and Denver had multiple corner 3s on a single possession. Jamal Murray, Jokic, miscommunications just on entry passes. To me, this one was Denver just needed one of the 10 missed shots they had down the stretch to go in, and this game would have been a little bit more cushy. But sometimes that happens. I will say, though, one thing that's important about the late game execution and really the entire second half, they're just such a long team. I mean, I love Trey Murphy. He's been one of my favorite players since he came out of the draft. Yeah. Dyson Daniels is extremely impressive. Herb Jones is a phenomenal defender. They just have so many guys. And even like Larry Nance is mobile. They just have a lot of guys that have a lot of length. And you saw Denver, the passing lanes weren't perfect in the second half of this game. They weren't open, and Denver didn't do a good enough job of punishing them on the 3. And so it got sticky in the tight window passing that Denver usually excels at.
You talked about the kind of missed shots. Joker mentioned that after the game too, and that's what I felt on rewatch was just like, oh, they got good looks. They just missed some. It was like that plus turnovers, and Joker mentioned that too. It's just like there wasn't anything that was like really concerning. They weren't like struggling with a matchup or like unable to like. You're right that the length was disrupting some of those passing lanes, but I thought that they were still able to create what they wanted, and it was stuff that was under the Nuggets' control over the course of like a 7-game series.
I think I agree with you. I mean, most of this is like KCP, Bruce Brown both missed a bunch of shots down the stretch that were like, hey, that's the shots you want. And if that's Michael Porter as well, you sprinkle him in there. I do think Denver will get the 3-point shots. They'll just need to shoot them and make them. One thing you said, though, that I think is where the Pelicans and Jose Alvarado in particular did exploit a weakness in Denver. Their second unit that did so well in the first half, that featured 3 bigs, Jeff Green, Zeke Naji, Vlatko Cancar, and Zeke Naji in particular, because I think he was the culprit of a lot of these. They do a good job because they can switch and they can guard, and you're not going to just ISO them. But what Jose did a really good job of was attacking the switch right as it happens, meaning making the confusion. Like when people think switching is easy, you just, all right, they screen, now you take that guy, I take this guy. But the timing of when that trade-off comes is really important. And if you're a crafty enough guard and a crafty enough screener that can slip early, sometimes that trade-off can be confusing. Did we actually switch or did we not? And I thought Jose did a very good job of putting them in a difficult spot on those. And then also going off the screen and then rejecting it at the exact moment that the switch happens. And Denver just needs practice with this. And Zeke Naji in particular, who does a good job of sitting and guarding one-on-one, but he did a poor job in the second half, I thought, of timing the switch properly. And Jose was going after him over and over.
I also thought that Jose did a really good job late down the stretch of attacking Joker. Like he brings the ball up and gets them into sets fast. If you attack Joker in mid transition, Joker is almost always going to drop. Like he's not going to just like push out, because that's when he's probably, if he's not like set and ready, he's likely to either foul or just get completely blown by. So Joker goes into drop, and that's when Alvarado was able to get to the floater, and then he looped under, and then that's when he got the Willie Hernandez. Like he did a really good job of attacking Joker downhill. And Joker, I think his conditioning was a little off based off of having a week off of rest. So I just wanted to just shout out Otis here with a Canadian who can't handle his herb. For shame. I just really enjoyed that. Let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk about the big lineups and how that plays out short and long term for the Nuggets. Adam's thoughts on that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. First, I've got to tell you about FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are here, and we're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On, because they're the #1 sports book in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers join today and get started with a $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel has all your favorite bets, from the money line to point spreads to player props. You can even combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. I bet on the Pelicans after Nikola was ruled in. I'm not going to feel bad about that because it was a 1-point game. I bet on the Pelicans money line. Had a chance to steal it there at the end. I also bet on the Lakers though last night. Not as good of a bet. Not as good of a bet as that one was. All on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Football fans, don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets, win or lose, at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Glad to have you guys with us on a Wednesday. Adam Mars and Matt Moore. So, Adam, I'm going to give you the floor. Talk to me about why the big lineups that the Denver Nuggets played last night, how they were constructed, and why they matter.
Well, so there were, I think, 4 lineups, 5-man lineups that played together last night that had never played a single minute before. The first one is Jamal Murray, Christian Brown, Vlatko Čančar, Zeke Naji, and Nikola Jokic. It only played a minute, like it was part of that stagger. But again, it's something that had never played before, and Vlatko is not a small forward. The one thing I'll tell you, though, is Murray is 6'5", Christian Brown 6'7", Vlatko is 6'9", Zeke 6'10", Jokic 7 foot. It's a huge lineup. It's just huge. And I'm telling you, I don't love this about the NBA, but I do think that defense now is more about the tools you have than the skill you have. And it's just like the way the NBA works, where you can't actually guard very well and you can't be physical, this or that. The length part of this matters. And that's a lineup that you look at and say, a lot of those guys seem to be out of position or clunky, but it works just because they're all enormous. Then you go to Bruce Brown, KCP, Christian Brown, Zeke Naji, and Jokic. Another lineup that had never played together, doesn't have a traditional point guard. But again, lots of defenders and some good size. That one worked. And then the one that ran away in the first half with it was Jamal Murray, Christian Brown, Vlatko Čančar, Jeff Green, and Zeke Naji. I don't even know who the center is. That's 3 power forwards. But again, just the fact that you had so many big bodies out there, Denver, the defensive rating of that group was insane, just because it was grabbing all the boards, switching everything and making things confusing, and then just an enormous amount of length and ground to cover. So to me, I know that the Nuggets, under this new regime under Calvin Booth, prioritize length. And their vision for this team is, hey, we just want to start putting longer and longer defensive-minded players who are capable offensively, but longer and longer around. And last night, to me, was the biggest proof of concept of how that looks. Now, Denver's offense struggled last night, but their defense, that was one of their best defensive rating games of the entire season. So to me, I look at that and I go, that's a look at the near future of the Denver Nuggets.
Where do you think the length helps the most defensively?
I think it's just like keeping people out of the paint, and clogging up passing lanes. Denver's when Jokic is on the court in particular, some of this happened without Jokic where you're just switching and it was effective. And then I mentioned Jose, I think, found a weakness in it. Denver will have to get better overall in the switch lineups. But in the non-switch lineups, the Jokic lineups, there's just a lot of ground that has to be covered. And to do that, the longer bodies you have, especially when they're mobile, the easier it is to cover that ground. So to me, that's where you make up for it, is you just need length around Jokic, and length in particular that can close out, recover, and all those things.
I think it's an interesting kind of debate here of, does having the length make it easier to contest threes, and that impacts shooting quality?
I think the answer to that is cut and dry. I think that one's no question.
Okay. My thing would be that with the particular players that they have, I think that one of the things that will probably be difficult is they recognize the need to contest on, like, you have to give a little bit more space if you're bigger, right? For drives, like, you can contain, but you have to like give a little bit more space.
It depends on how mobile you are. Herb Jones doesn't. Like, he's just so good at, he can close out shallow and recover. Some guys can, but
like Vlatko does, right?
But Vlatko does.
Yeah. And so, like, I look at last night and I go, they shot 5 of 26 from 3-point range, and
they being the Pelicans.
Yeah, the Pelicans. And so my question would be, if in certain series, not all of them, but if in certain series, that would be a complication of those kind of looks, that certain teams would just be able to rotate the ball, catch these defenders just a step off, and just fire over them. Because that's like one of the things that we see a lot in the NBA is guys will be in position on switches or zone or whatever, and then just teams just fire over them because they can't step up and deny space.
But man, I'm less talking about the players currently on the roster. This is just like Denver playing the best that is available to them. But I think if you look at the players that they have brought in, that includes Christian Brown, like, you look at this and go, okay, those are pieces. Maybe at the trade deadline you add another one, maybe later. But if you were to put Jokic on, say, the Orlando Magic, or even on this New Orleans team in place of Big Val, and he just had a Herb Jones, a Dyson Daniel, a Najee Marshall, like these guys that are actually capable of doing the things I'm talking about as wings, that's what I'm talking about. And I think Denver's moving that direction. KCP is this way. I know he's not thought of as big, but he actually is pretty big given his
wings. Yeah, he is.
And this or that. Christian Brown is pretty big, especially when he's playing the guard spots. Aaron Gordon is big. I just think Denver is 70% of the way there to getting their roster there. And if you replaced a Jeff Green and a Vlatko Cancar in the rotation with guys who are more naturally combo forwards rather than just straight power forwards, to me, that's why it's proof of concept, is you're doing it with the B- version of those players.
Christian at 2 is really interesting, I think. Can I ask you an unrelated Christian Brown question?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that with Christian Brown, it's that the Nuggets are worse when he doesn't play or better when he does?
I think that
they're related. I know.
No, it's tough because we've talked about this, but I understand why he isn't playing when everybody's healthy. I do think I'll say that I think the Nuggets are better when he does. I think he's part of their like higher upside combinations, because he provides a consistent defense that they just need, and a consistent size that they need.
Let's talk about, there's some comments going on in the chat section about this potential matchup in the playoffs. The Pelicans have given the Nuggets trouble. You've kind of identified this a little bit. I want to get your thoughts on if you think that this is legitimately like a team that would give the Nuggets like a lot of trouble. Like, how much trouble would the Pelicans be in a 7-game series in the playoffs, do you think?
It's what's interesting about it to me is I think that they give the Nuggets offense trouble. Like, Denver's offense, I think, would look uglier against the Pelicans than it would against most teams. But I think that Denver defensively would guard them better than they would most teams. So this would be a lower scoring series than most of them. I would say they're not one of my top teams I'm concerned about for Denver, but I do think that there's reason to think like a pivotal game 3 could go at Jose Alvarado's way or this or that.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think it'd be an easy series. I think it'd be a pretty standard, like most playoff series are tough. I will say, like, the Pelicans don't profile as And this is one thing that their fans have talked a lot about. Like I follow a lot of Pelicans writers and podcasters and fans on Twitter, and they've talked a lot about how they need offensive creation and they need shooting, and that's been like a problem for them. Like they're not that efficient of an offense because of their 3-point ability. And you kind of saw that in this game, and you say like, well, BI was out and CJ McCollum had an off game, sure, but Ingram, there's a trade-off, which is like you add Ingram and then the defense gets worse.
Yeah. Same with Zion, by the way. I mean, this is the thing about last night. One, Denver was up 18 points in the second half of this game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can over-index on that the same way you can't over-index on the fact that they didn't score for a 5-minute stretch or whatever it was in the fourth. I think it's no more likely to say, oh, it was only a 1-point win than it is to say Denver's always going to go 0 for 8 in the fourth quarter in the final 5 minutes or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this was very close to being a comfortable 15-point win.
Which without Zion and BI, it should be.
Yeah, you would expect.
Yeah. So, and there's comments in the chat about like, well, but Zion, and yeah, like Zion's a monster. I'd also say like Zion hasn't been in a playoff series yet. Like that does matter here. And we got a long way to go before we see this matchup anyway.
And I'm telling you, a lot of this was, again, Nuggets missed some wide open shots that they don't miss very often. I mean, this was a 5th percentile shooting game from them in the clutch. And then on top of that, Jose exploited a specific thing in Denver that I think in a playoff series you won't be able to exploit as much. Like that's a thing that'll be, hey, we have to make sure he does this thing, and we have to make sure we're prepared for it.
Let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk about the game versus the Bucks, who we expect to play and who we won't in that game. We'll talk about that plus some trade chatter. We'll do that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for making Locked On Nuggets your first listen today. Make your second listen Game to Game NBA. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NBA. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. Final segment here with Adam Mara. Glad to have you guys with us. So let's talk about the game tonight. The Nuggets play in New Orleans last night, 6 o'clock Mountain Time start. Gets done at like 8:30. Post-game stuff usually takes about an hour and a half, about 10. There were flight troubles last night. Mike Singer reported on this from his end, but he thinks that they got out. I would still say probably that it took them a while to get there. They probably got in around 2 or 3. This is usual for them when they have the back-to-back in Milwaukee. So there's like a whole, like they're going to be tired. This line, by the way, for somebody asked me about this earlier, wanted me to talk about this, about how Jonathan said this earlier. He said, Matt, at some point, can you talk about the spread and whether the line makers actually have insider info about people sitting, or are they just putting the lines to reflect betting behavior? What I would tell you is that there is an expectation that they have, right? Like they're willing to go ahead and bet that Jamal, after playing 40 minutes, probably not playing tonight. The Joker, after having missed several games with injury, probably isn't playing the back-to-back tonight. And so if they put a line that is shorter towards Milwaukee, right? So this open 6.5, it's currently 8. They will get hit with so much. If they put like, let's say that they opened it, this is probably Bucks -4, not on a back-to-back in Milwaukee. They will get hammered with Bucks money, expecting them to be out. So they go ahead and they put it up here, knowing that like if Joker plays, that they'll move the line back and they'll take enough money on Denver to balance it out. Like it'll be fine if Joker plays because there'll be a flood of money once Joker's announced in. I'm not willing to like say that Joker's not going to play. The line certainly says that, but like with Joker, I just kind of am like, no, you're gonna have to tell me he's out before I think he's out. That's just what I've gotten used to. Murray, I think, is definitely out. Like 40 minutes back to back, no reason to do this. So without Murray, probably no Jokic based off of what the line indicates. And just the Nuggets kind of approach lately has been a little bit more like, we can afford this. They really need to rest Aaron Gordon. That's the one that I think they really need to rest, Adam.
I mean, there's no question about it. I will say this. I just looked at the schedule as you were talking. This is the single toughest game on the schedule, I think, for Denver. I just went through it. You have to assume a back-to-back is the hardest, a road back-to-back because it implies travel. And then when you just look at the distance, this is and the competition. So to me, this is easily the single toughest game on the Denver Nuggets schedule. Aaron Gordon has looked a little rough the last couple ones. He clearly looks like he could use a rest. Denver doesn't play till Saturday. So if you rested him tonight, you get 4 nights rest, basically, before you have to play again. That would be big. Jamal Murray, I know that he's over this hump of playing on back-to-backs, but is tonight the night you want to push him there? And then Jokic, the hamstring thing is just concerning. Like, hamstrings don't just go away. You have to kind of give them the proper amount of rest. So tonight you asked, Bones has already been out. Michael Porter, I expect to continue to miss. I mean, maybe he'll be back Saturday. We'll find out. I don't know. But it was reported he wasn't with the team yesterday, so I don't know if he's meeting up in Milwaukee. To me, this is a game that I would not be surprised if Denver was resting 4 or 5 of their top guys. I don't think you could blame them for it. Is this game important? Do they need to beat the Milwaukee Bucks? Do they need to measure themselves up against them? This game doesn't really mean anything to Denver. It sucks for the fans, but this was just a horrible schedule from the NBA. Do you think, by the way, Matt, you follow the schedule a lot. This is, I think, 1,100 miles of travel on a 24-hour back-to-back. How many games do you think are going to be worse than that? 1,100 miles and a back-to-back.
I'd have to do the math on how long it is on the East Coast to Miami, because I know that that's like always a spot that teams talk about, is like they'll have to play either in Midwest or North Atlantic and then make the flight all the way down to Miami, and that one is apparently an issue.
I think honestly, I would be shocked, but the only one that I could think of is Portland, because they're kind of 1,000 miles from a lot of places. So I think Portland, Utah, those are the only teams. But even Denver, there's the other piece of this, which is sometimes you travel west for these and you gain a little bit extra time or whatever, but going like in the same time zone.
Yeah.
And then there's also, I don't know how this is, but you do have to imagine that these guys are also humans and they have to like pack and everything. And the way you dress in New Orleans is so different than how you dress in Milwaukee.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Just weird. I just think this is the weirdest back-to-back the NBA could have. One of the weirder ones they could have done.
The Nuggets did recall Jack White from the Gold. So
Did they?
Yeah, that's a
dead giveaway.
Yeah, that's a signal. I think we're gonna get a lot of Ish Smith tonight. I don't know if P. Watt got recalled. I think P. Watt's still hurt.
I think he's hurt.
I don't think any Peyton Watson tonight. So like,
which is a drag. I would have loved to have seen him. Honestly, I know this sounds dumb. I would have loved to have seen him guard Giannis. Just got obliterated, but like, hey, these are the types of things you want to see.
I'm excited for Zeke Naji versus Giannis. That's going to be an entertaining time. Yeah, it's a bad spot. Let's talk about some trade stuff before we get out of here. Just some things that like I've kind of heard. So Portland, I mentioned this the other day. Portland, Phoenix. Like right now, here's like the teams that I think are most involved at the deadline right now. Portland, Phoenix, Toronto, Charlotte, Chicago, New York, Dallas. Those are like the 7 teams that I think are most involved. Portland.
Atlanta, you didn't mention Atlanta, which is another one.
I don't think that they are as much. There's been kind of, since the new front office took over, there's been more of like a tamping that down. I think they're trying to repair things with John Collins. I think that's dumb, because I think John Collins' big problem.
They have other players to trade, though.
They do.
Other pieces. So
I think Bogdanovich could get moved. I think Portland and Phoenix are 2 teams that I kind of think are looking to make major moves. Like they are looking for like significant upgrades. Point guards are it's the same stuff it has been for the last 2 years. It's point guard and center. Those are the 2 things that everyone's looking to get. So, and like the Nuggets don't necessarily. Now, I guess this does bring up the question of like Bones, right? Like if you think that this is an opportunity to move Bones to get an upgrade, I think one of the things I'll say about this with Bones, the long-term stuff, like no matter how things look right now or how frustrated he is, these things are over multiple years. Like this could pass and everything could be like 2 years from now. It could be like, remember when like Bones was really upset and couldn't, and like got pulled and everything was really bad and the minutes were awful with him. Look at him now. Like that's entirely possible. The other thing I kind of think about is just, if you have Jamal, getting backup point guards is not easy. That's why there's such a hot commodity in the market right now. So the idea is like, well, you can afford to move Bones because you got Bruce Brown and you can just play Christian Brown more. Okay, but Bruce Brown is on this contract situation where he may not be retainable.
That's actually that to me is the biggest reason that you would have to like be cautious about how you manage that. Because this year I think it's like, okay, it's fine. Denver would be fine without a true backup point guard.
I think one of the questions is there's two different things here, which is the objective value of Bones, which is like he's a fun and can be good player. And then there's, does he do what this team needs? And those are two different questions. And it may not be even about what Bones does. It may just be like, no, like we need the rest of the roster for money or whatever. And Bones would be better off.
I think there's a third leg of this, though. I think there's a third leg of this. And this is that you have to establish an identity with your team should have identity, starters, second unit, whatever. And the identity with Bones is different than the identity without him. And so you have to be, can you commit to winning with that? Because I don't think a lot of people are like, well, when he's playing, you play him. And when he's not. Like, I don't think you can get into a playoff series like that. I just don't. Like, you're committed. We're playing this way with this guy.
Danny says, if we trade Bones and he turns into an absolute 24 points per game torch, I'll be so mad. But there's also window concerns. Yes. Like, just got to tell you, Bones is going to kill it. Like, Bones is a certified scorer. Bones is going to be in this league a long time, I think. Like, Bones is no matter how bad his defense is, Bones is an absolute bucket. And those guys hang around. Like, Bones is probably going to have a great career.
Why not consider trading Bruce? This one's an interesting one. Like, just conceptually, if you just like removed yourself from covering a team or something, it honestly is not the craziest thing to say. You're almost certainly going to lose him for nothing. He's playing great, but it's always hard in the NBA when you lose a guy for nothing. But that being said, I just don't think that you could possibly trade Bruce.
It's a really fascinating question because you're like, well, you do have Christian Brown. It's just like
so, like, yeah, because it's it's tough.
But like, here's the thing, Bruce. You want to know why you don't trade Bruce? This is why. Because in the playoffs, sometimes it's not about the logical answer. It's not about what conceptually makes sense from a roles and positioning. It's just this guy is really good in this series and does a lot of things that you need in this matchup because of specifically how this team plays. And Bruce can do that against like 20 different teams.
If you could trade Bruce for like an Alex Caruso, would you do it? Alex Caruso is like Bruce. Like, he's going to be an elite defensive player. He fit in nicely.
I would not. I'm higher on Bruce than I am Caruso.
I know, but are you higher on Bruce for 1 year versus Caruso for 3?
God, that's a good question. Probably Bruce. I still just think that like, and like Bruce, Bruce fits really well here. Like, he has good relationships with everybody. Everybody likes.
This is the thing. Bruce has been perfect. Like, and more importantly, like, he's a guy that seems to like it here. But there is that looming thing of like the CBA is screwing Denver in part on this one, and that they can't retain him.
Yeah,
or it's very unlikely, I should say, that they can retain him.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, the other thing I would say is, I keep looking at Phoenix. And everyone's kind of forgotten about them because they've fallen off the radar. They're under 500. They were under 500. They've won four straight now. Like, everyone's kind of like forgotten about them. And I'm like, guys, they were the top team in the Western Conference before Book got hurt. And they have Jay Crowder. And if they really want to get aggressive, they can move DeAndre Ayton. And like, they are not looking for like small tweaks because they believe they have a championship core. Like, everything I've heard is they're like, oh no, like that role player is good, but how about your superstar? Like, they are. I just keep an eye out.
The Ayton piece of this is also interesting to me because I do think that trading Ayton for a superstar. By the way, like, what kind of superstars are we talking about that are on the market right now? Pascal Siakam.
OG is considered by a lot of folks. OG is like OG.
Either way, either one of those two guys, if you swapped Ayton, they would be better against every team but Denver. I think that makes them worse against Denver.
That's interesting.
Don't tell me Biyombo is going to go in there and slow Jokic down in the series. Like, that's going to be – he's going to foul out in 20 minutes, and Jokic is going to score at will in those minutes.
This is speculation. This is not a reported deal. I need to be clear. This is speculation. This is informed because I know that there's conversations that have been had. I keep looking at Portland as a possible place where Ayton ends up. That one makes a lot of sense to me.
And they get Nurkic?
Yeah.
Nurkic has to get out of Portland, in my opinion. Portland can't win with him, but I don't. Nurkic and Phoenix, man, like, then Phoenix can't win with him.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to kind of see. And then there's the Warriors. I will say, like, the Warriors have been actually like they're looking to make a move for sure. JaMychal Green's available, So that's like, why are you laughing? Don't laugh about J Mike. I love J Mike.
I was telling you the way the narratives form, because do you remember it was like week 1 of the season and there was a lot of J Mike praise coming out, and he had the thing like, yeah, you get to play free here, this or that. So it's just fun that people are like, I can't believe it. Lost J Mike. You're like, come on, man.
Yeah, and if you notice, like Bowl's like slowly, it is
Slowly
kind of
coming
funny how
back.
things have gone that route. You got anything else before we get out of here?
I think that's it for today.
All right, let's go wrap it up for Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Hope you guys have yourselves a great day. We'll be back tomorrow with a recap of the Bucks game, whatever this winds up looking like. Hope you guys have a great week. Make sure to check out our Twitter at Locked On Nuggets and follow all of Adam's stuff over at DNVR and the crew. Appreciate you guys being with us. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.